Today, President Zelensky addressed the Lithuanian parliament. He reiterated that Russia was not just currently a threat to Ukraine, but to Europe as a whole. Have a listen.
The fully-fledged war against Ukraine launched by Russia put a strategic question whether the values, those who were used as a basis to unite people in the European continent after World War II, are they still alive, or are these values are outdated now and they could be just exhibits in the museum for tourists, just a historic legacy of Europe somewhere in ancient palaces and halls, or things which are set up the real life. But unfortunately, there are no clear answer to those questions. But it is really the future of Europe depends on those answers on this, whether the common response will be found.
President Zelensky there. Well, President Vladimir Putin has described Russia's military objectives in Ukraine as, quote, noble, asserting that he has no doubt they will be achieved. Making a rare public appearance, Mr. Putin said the main aim was, as he put it, to help the people of Donbas. Have a listen.
And we are aware that today our officers are participating in the special operation in Donbas in Ukraine, providing assistance to the People's Republic of Donbas. They are acting heroically and applying the most modern types of equipment with the modern features.
Well, that was Vladimir Putin. Our correspondent Anna Foster is in Bucha on the outskirts of Kiev. And Anna, in a second, we'll talk about where you are. But President Zelensky very much staying on message. And we saw that rare public appearance from Vladimir Putin as well.
We did, and President Zelensky, as you say there, has really honed, I think, over the last few weeks, the message that he wants to get out to the world. He's repeated it to parliamentarians, he's repeated it to the people of this nation night after night, where he makes that address and really tries to keep them rallied as this conflict continues. He told, as you heard there, the Lithuanian parliamentarians today that Russia was a threat not just to Ukraine, but to the whole of Europe. And it was interesting to hear what President Putin had to say on Russian Cosmonauts Day in this rare address. One thing I found particularly interesting in that, he was talking about the quality of the Russian equipment, but we saw just on the outskirts of Bucha this morning a destroyed Russian defensive position. There were tanks, there were armoured personnel carriers, and what looked like the remains of a very ragtag battalion who had been pulled together with equipment that they had clearly brought themselves, things like civilian sleeping bags, their uniforms, what was left of them didn't match. So what you see on the ground here, that evidence that you see, and the rhetoric that he is putting out to the Russian people, they sound like two different things.
Yeah, Anna, tell us a little bit more about where in Bucha you are now, because of course, as you say, I saw you around those burnt vehicles, but what's happening where you are now?
So this is the centre of Bucha, and as you can see, it was a shopping centre. It's hard to tell, frankly, isn't it, when you look at the damage, that it used to be the shopping centre, the kind of place, there's a sports shop here, the sort of place where people would go, a cinema. It just is completely destroyed, and this has been repeated in so many places around Bucha. I've also been just down the road here to a mass grave just next to the church. This is where the people of the town of Bucha buried their dead. We saw, didn't they, with those awful images of bodies lying in the street, and we saw the mass grave today where they are very carefully, very delicately and slowly exhuming that. They have war crimes investigators there who are making sure that that is done in the most forensic way possible to gather every bit of evidence they need. But of course, there are people living here in this town still. Many have fled, but many are still here. Some have come back and they're trying to establish their lives. And if you think about what day-to-day life is like here in Bucha right now, where you walk past something like this, or like a mass grave, or you are trying to put your house back together, but there's the leftovers of Russian munitions in the garden. I went to see one block of flats yesterday, and the man who lived there was telling me how they'd buried one of their neighbours right outside, and how they just yesterday exhumed his body to give him a more dignified burial. Just gives you an idea of the kind of things that people here are are struggling with in the aftermath of the Russian occupation here.
Yeah, absolutely horrific. And you're talking there about the situation in Bucha, but of course, other parts of the country continue to reel and deal with Russian bombardment, namely Mariupol, where we're hearing reports. And of course, these are unconfirmed reports, and the US and the UK are investigating, but of chemical weapons being used.
That's right. I mean, you're absolutely right to say this is one small town in Ukraine. And when you think about what we have seen elsewhere and places like Mariupol that we believe have been almost completely razed by Russian shelling, we heard these reports last night that they may have seen their first use of chemical weapons in Mariupol. It is, of course, very hard, as you know, to verify this. And you will hear testimonies and see some images maybe circulating on social media today. But what we know that governments are trying to do right now in response to that is establish how true this is. We know that, for example, the UK Ministry of Defence said only yesterday that they believed that Russia were about to use chemical weapons in Mariupol, where that battle has been raging, where reports say it may well be coming towards the end. But it is so important, as lawmakers are saying, to verify this, and if this turns out to be a correct report, to make sure that appropriate consequences are given to the people behind this.